Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hermitage Dhamma. And see, there's several people who are tuning in again. That's nice to see. And quite a lovely day today. Kind of last year when I was doing the live stream, and by the way, let me know if how the volume is, if you need it to be louder. But I recount last year during the winter, it's sort of like, Groundhog Day, sort of the movie, just sort of day in, day out, and a lot of life can be like that. But it's still there's these joys that come up, this happiness that we can experience, and so it's quite lovely. And again, I'm living here with, if those of you who tuned in last week, or who are on our alms round, or who know about the Hermitage, it's with Ajahn Kasapo and Ajahn Titapanyo. I'm living with the two of them, and so yeah, it's really nice. Last week we did an interview with them, and I've lived with the two of them for about 15 years on and off. And so it's interesting just to see how relationships change and people change and how we change. And that's mostly what we're seeing, and mostly what's important to deal with. So I've found that last year when I was living with Ajahn Kovilo for about 5 weeks and Tanisibo for 4 months during the winter retreat, it's different. The dynamics are always different with different people, aren't they? And so it's just sort of getting used to those differences, but it's always like an internal job. It always feels like it's kind of a work in progress on oneself, on myself. And I appreciate that. Lately, I've just been looking at moods and how entwining moods can be, and that it's harder to see that when I'm alone in my kuti. I can kind of assess my own mind, but then when I'm essentially around other people, then that's highlighted much more. And I notice it's almost a daily routine for the three of us that the alms round is ended, the three of us are in the house together, and I immediately start to get the food ready to be for us to do a small bindabat, small alms round, receive our food, and just reheating some of it in the microwave. And how easy it is just to get caught off guard, and a bit ornery, haven't eaten anything substantial, and just it's getting on usually around 10 a.m. and how important it is to really guard one's mind in situations like that, because we're not often in control of our moods. They come into the mind, and we don't always have a way of always being very clear around them, especially if our minds drift off from the body, and if we just start reacting. And that's often the problem, is just this reaction that we can kind of get into very easily with others. And again, this happens when we're alone or with others as well. But for me, it's obvious when I'm about to get into trouble or getting into trouble with somebody else, that, oh, right, like, check the mood. As my mother would often say to me, sometimes I'd be ornery or something with her, and she'd say, when I was young, she'd probably say it now too, "You're hungry, aren't you?" And I wouldn't know it. I wouldn't be aware of that. And she would notice that I was, angry or aversive or whatever, and yeah, I was really hungry, and how easy that is. Just before the meal, there can be this sense of when with the when I'm living here, or in any kind of situation, just giving into that emotive quality, reacting to that mood, and unfortunately, then something is said that's not very beautiful, or not very welcome, or somebody else says something that's a trigger, or I say something that's a trigger, or whatever it is. And I can notice just how much I believe in that, then, like, oh, my frustration with somebody else, or my, just usually it's just anger. And getting bounced around by that mood quite a bit. And then I just notice how gleeful I am after the meal. I've eaten, and I'm full. I've had enough food for the day, and there's just this kind of calm and gleefulness. And so the same people who I was annoyed with just an hour before are now like friendly towards, and giddy, kind of and just these are just moods washing over the mind. Of course, being giddy and pleasant or being giddy and kind of fun and just happy is a lot more enjoyable to be around than someone who's frustrated or angry. But either way, they're just kind of the mind bouncing around with these moods, and how important it is to just be aware of them, and to really see the suffering that occurs when reactivity is just bought into, as if like, well, this is the reality of the moment. It's not something that's passing. It's something, this is how it is. This person has just said something that's offended me, and rather than, it's always more pleasant just paying attention to the body, and then knowing that, naming that mood, knowing like, oh yeah, I'm frustrated right now, or I haven't eaten, whatever it might be. And how pleasant that is just to stay with the body and be with that, even if the feeling is kind of, one's shaky, or there's an unpleasantness or something like that. And so that's just something I've been noticing and working with a little bit. And it's an obvious thing. It's an easy thing. I think most of us are aware of this. This is pretty basic stuff, but still how easy it is to get trapped by our emotive sense and our emotive quality of mind. So the Buddha was really encouraging us to just to really create a refuge for ourselves within our bodies, within our own minds, around what it is that we're paying attention to, and how we're paying attention to that thing. So for me to instead investigate, like, oh, what's this frustrated feeling about, and then to trace it back to a feeling of hunger, how helpful that is. And that's essentially what Yoniso Manasikara is, sort of paying attention to the origin of things. This is wise attention, is one translation, and it's very helpful, because then it's not, of course, it's not personal. The self is taken out of the situation, and we don't really have a feeling also of permanence, like this is a sense, this is permanently just how I am, or how these others are. This monk is like this or like that, and it's very easy to buy into that and believe our own minds when we're reacting to these emotions. And of course, as I mentioned, it's not just anger, it's any emotion we have. So fear, we can have fear around that, around something that's moving our mind, or we're reacting to our mind. And other things, anything could be like grieving, great grieving, or any kind of emotive sense. And then we do often believe in the permanent experience of that. Or we think there's something wrong with us, or wrong with our experience, rather than, again, it's just like just mist moving through a mountain, like a mountainous scene. If you just think of clouds moving through, that's all they're doing. And again, as I've used that quality with thoughts as well. Like thoughts are like fog. Then it's similar with our emotive sense. They just they can just follow through. Our emotions can just like watching a beautiful scenery or something as the clouds go by. We don't kind of get angry with the clouds, like, why are you here? We might, but it's pretty ineffective. But we can just appreciate that anicca, that moving quality, that sense that things are not permanently there. And in that way, then we have a more helpful view around anicca. Often we're wanting permanence, we're wanting things to be stable, but with negative emotions, for example, negative moods, then we can sort of enjoy the anicca sense, like, well, this too shall pass. Anyway, those are just some things I've been watching a little bit, amongst others. There's a lot of time for meditation now, and so I find for myself that's the winter retreat, but just any time, as many of you who are practitioners find that just being able to sit for long periods of time, watching the breath, watching the mind, and it's a pretty simple experience, just and the most difficult in the world, which is a wonder how the most simple thing could be the most difficult. But just trying to watch the mind, it's not really that complex, and I find that insights just flow when we're able to have that awareness that's bright and centered, and not reactive, and not moving with our moods or our thoughts, but instead, staying here in the present moment, and being aware of our understanding of dukkha, and how and why it's arising, how desire is causing that. So if there's any questions anybody has about that or anything else, please go ahead and post them. Robert asks, is there a difference between feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and moods? Which is a good question. I think, yes, there are. My sense of it, so there's different, Robert is referring to, and specifically in his question, so what I'm inferring is he's referring to vedana, and that's what the Buddha, the English translation of that is feeling. Another two words that have been associated with are feeling, tone. There's a particular tradition that uses the word sensation, but that's not, as I understand it, the translation I go with, or I've heard some of my teachers go with. So feeling, or feeling tone, vedana, is a sense of, and again, as Robert said, there's pleasant feeling, there's unpleasant feeling, there's neutral feeling. How I experience vedana is more of just a larger picture sense. So it's just like the general feeling of my experience, the general feeling of the body, the general feeling of my experience. Am I feeling hot right now, or tired, or is there a particular pain, or whatever it is. There's an unpleasant quality to the experience, or a pleasant quality to the experience, or it's just sort of neutral. It's neither of those. Although I don't experience neutral feeling too often, at least in my own sense, that there seems to be some feeling in one way or the other that's pleasant or unpleasant. So the difference between a mood, I think, is that a mood has the quality, can have a quality of being of a particular vedana. So like it can have a pleasant experience. You can have a pleasant experience. So if I'm feeling, like I was saying, hangry, so I'm sort of frustrated and upset because I'm hungry, there's an unpleasant experience within the body. So the vedana is unpleasant. The feeling is unpleasant. Whereas that's different than the mood of what the actual mood is, which can be a whole sort of different. It's a mood is more of a strata of different qualities one feels, and the Vedana, I think, is sort of like the overall experience of that mood. And so again, like if one is giddy or something, there might be a pleasant feeling in the body, or a pleasant aspect to one's experience. And one can also go through pleasant and unpleasant Vedana. It's not like 100% all or nothing. So one can have both of those, or be moving through those different Vedanas, those different feelings. And as the Buddha really talks about that contact, passa is, it's sort of begins that process, or feeling, not really process, but it's part of that sense. We get contacted, we have a bodily contact, and then we have a feeling arise. And where Sanya comes in with that, with perception, is it's conjoined with that feeling, is that there is you have a perception of that. There's an aspect of memory that's tuned in with that, and then there's a recognition, especially a recognition that, there is a pleasantness, or there's an unpleasant feeling, whatever it might be. So let's see, how does one let go of regretful memories and actions from the past, then return unbidden? I think this is from Holly. I think this is a very typical experience as a human. We have regretful memories. They come up. Actions come up. I surely have identified this quite a bit in my own mind and my own practice. And I think one of the things that's helped me a lot with this is just to know that it's an impersonal process. That when we experience memories, regretful actions that come up for us, the tendency is for myself, oh, so stupid that I did that. I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? And one of the problems with that, with the movement of mind in that direction, is it's compounding self, right? It's creating self. It's creating me and how I am based on this memory. And that, unfortunately, is a conundrum, because we don't want to be creating self. We don't want to be using these memories to inform ourselves about what it is that we, who and what we are, because that's sort of a basis of misunderstanding that the Buddha talks about with our sense of self. So there's nothing, I think there's not a lot to be gained in terms of bringing up regretful memories, except in terms of learning, in terms of knowing, like, okay, I did this thing, this was harmful, I don't want to do this again, right? So this was not a good thing. This wasn't helpful for me, helpful to another person, whatever it might be. And so the sense of learning without the guilt, and the regret that we associate with it, and the kind of torturing of ourselves, and believing that this is who and what we are, that's separate from the learning. So if one can contextualize a memory in that way, it's very helpful. Like, I did that, I don't want to do that again, or make a determination, I won't do that again. But when we move more into the guilt, or the fear, or the anger, or the repression, I don't think repression really helps. But for me, coming back to the body, coming back to my own experience, reminding myself, like, well, that is something that I did. There's a responsibility there. I have to take ownership of that. But for me to believe this is who and what I am, or what I am, I'm based on, that I did this thing, it's not helpful to myself. It's not helpful to others. And it's just compounding, again, that belief in a permanent entity, a permanent identity. So letting go of that is, again, coming back to the sense of the experience of the body, knowing the feeling that's arising, seeing the unpleasant, seeing the sense that this isn't really a helpful thing to move into, and seeing that the present moment is actually much more of sort of who and what we are. It's an experience of awareness rather than consolidation of self or a solidifying of self. Another thing that I do, other than just and that again comes back to the simplistic practice of just paying attention to our body. But I just wanted to say that another thing that I do is try to remind myself, well, I know that was an unhelpful action. I know that was regrettable. When's the last time I did something like that? Oh, that was actually 2 years ago. This memory's coming up. Have I done something like that similar? And maybe you'll say yes, but it's good to say like, well, how much have I learned from that? Have I learned from the mistake and given it up? When's the last time? And so we try to remember that, but then we also remember what are the good things that I'm doing. So we need to also bring up our wholesome actions and remind ourselves, well, these regrettable actions are not actually what define me. If I actually look in the wholesome direction, there might be so many wholesome things that I'm just ignoring because I'm paying attention to this regretful memory. Unfortunately, that's how many of us live, with this sense of regret around the past things that we've done. And so that's really the I think the shape of that, how to interact with that kind of problem that comes up, and to know that it's just impersonal. It's not something that we necessarily can escape from. And these regrets and memories come up, and they're part of just our mind, and they're often part of what we put into our mind, as I'm trying to illustrate, that the more time we spend thinking about them or bringing up our past regrettable actions, then the more we are going to think about them, the more we are going to have them in our mind. And the less that we do that, the more that okay, this is a good time to pay attention to the body. When we come back to the body, when we experience a regrettable memory, or we remind ourselves of good things or what we've learned, whatever, some of the things that I've been saying, that's how we're going to fill our mind. So if we fill our mind with our wholesome actions, remembering our wholesome actions, then we're going to have very pleasant meditations, and those regrettable actions are going to fade in the background. We're not going to remember them as much because we're not going to keep rehashing them. And that's our sort of duty to ourselves. That's the effort we want to put in, is to recognize, well, there's a feeling to this, there's an experience around it. When it comes up, I can't repress it, I can't push it away, I can't push it down, but I can just be aware of what's coming up around it. And eventually I think it will disband, it will dissolve, or it will have less vedana attached to it. It'll have less unpleasant feeling attached to it. So it'll kind of come up, and the awareness of it will be there, but there won't be so much attachment to it. It'll just be like, oh yeah, there's that thought again. There's that obsessive thought again. It keeps coming up. That's just the mind. There it goes again. Oh well, what are you going to do? And that's, I think, probably a good sense of how to deal with things like that, at least from my own perspective. Are you able to tell me the sutta that contains the Buddha talking about Brahma incorrectly believing he was the creator of this universe? I just listened to that sutta. That, I believe, is in the Brahmajala Sutta, the net of, I think that's what it's called, the net of views, or the something net of views. Anyway, yeah, in that sutta, the Buddha is talking about, I think that's it, but basically he's talking about, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but I do know what you're referring to. He's talking about how a creator god or a Brahma god might believe that, they've been around for so long, that they just think they're the creator of the universe. So they can't discern, having not been around, because they've been around for so long, eons and eons and eons, and it just seems like forever. So for them, there's a case of like no regretful memories or no past memories. So there's not like a real memory of birth or what came before. there's just this sense of this is what I am. I'm the sort of creator of this realm. And it's not until one sort of that creator God or that Brahma God would dissolve, that they would be like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not the creator of the universe, or I just like every other being. I fall apart. I'm not really above it. I'm not above the universe. I'm not this permanent entity. And so I'll have to look that up. It's hard for me to do this while I'm doing live stuff, but first of the in the Digha Nikaya, and I think it's the all-embracing net of views. There you go. So yeah, that hopefully answers that. If I got that right, I'll check it out again. But I did just listen to that sutta a few nights ago. Okay, I think I'll be able to answer that one in a moment. There was one other one up here from Rick. How common is it for people to feel uncomfortable practicing with others? Do you have any suggestions for practitioners who feel anxiety or have triggered trauma when practicing with a group? I'm assuming, Rick, that you mean like actually a sitting group where you sit with people. Well, I would say that if you can stand it, if you can take it, if you can actually be in the group without losing your mind, so in other words, without kind of going crazy, where you have to get up and leave, but even that's okay. I would say, well, in terms of how common it is, I don't know. I do know that people have all kinds of things happening to them when they practice, and that surely doesn't seem like an odd one. It seems like it's pretty normal to kind of feel also a sense of the self kind of coming up, or self-criticism, or like fear around others. That makes sense to me. In terms of practicing, one thing I was going to say, though, was that it's good if you do feel that, it's good, like, okay, then maybe that's a helpful thing to do sometimes, is to sort of expose myself to that so I can work with that anxiety. Because if it's not coming up when I'm alone, there are some times when it's helpful to actually move into a space where you can find a way to work with it. So maybe you work with one or two people, or sit with one or two people instead of 20. And then you start gradually build up. But one of the things I would do is metta. Seems to be like that would be the answer to your question. It's just trying to remember that, or remind yourself that the engagement of sitting in a group is really one of, kindness and, people in common searching for peace and being interested in peace. And so that's really what I think is important in terms of remembering when you're in that group, because the anxiety, I would think, would come up probably around just like fear, like fear around people, or what are they thinking of me, or what are they doing, or my eyes are closed. But I think for the most part, we don't, we have really no idea what's in other people's minds. I'm not sure if that's what it is for you, but it seems like that would be pretty common, something that can come up for people, especially in retreat situations. You start to get very focused on your own mind, and then it's hard to actually have a clarity around, like, well, is this me? Are there other people actually noticing what I'm doing? Or, this is the sort of what they call the yogi mind. We start to get very sensitive around others. This can happen in a winter retreat with 3 Buddhist monks living together. And so you start to get, just worried about what the other person's thinking, or your perception of them can be different. Or you can start, what I notice for myself is people can say things to me, or, like the monks I'm living with might say something, and I take it immediately as something about myself to be true. Whereas I'm like, wait a minute, this is a perception here. I need to check my own perception. Is this true? Is this correct? Is this my motivation? Is it not my motivation? Is this other person probably they're getting triggered in some way? I'm triggered. So in a sense, most human beings are just fairly neurotic and fearful around each other, and basically you don't know. There's this kind of innate wondering, I think, as a human being, for many people around, like, does that person have like a knife in their hand, or some food, or whatever, or just something that that's benevolent, kind, or non-harmful, or is there a fear associated with them? And I think deep down, a lot of us approach each other in that way, and even people who are probably been married a long time, or around each other, or family members, I think there's still residual senses of that, like, am I about to get in trouble with this person? And we might not even really be aware of how much that's operating for us. So in a group, especially a group of people we don't know that well, if we're sitting with them, I can totally understand that coming up. But I think spreading metta, wishing them well, trying to kind of create in your own mind that they're probably wishing you well, wanting you to be happy. And that's probably the best antidote in that situation, is just that well-wishing quality. Also having compassion for them, kind of remembering your own anxiety, then you can say, oh, they probably experience this anxiety too. They might be afraid of the same thing. They might be afraid of me. So we often think that, like, the enemies are, these are our enemies. But if they're thinking that you're the enemy, and you're thinking they're the enemy, then it's the same thing, isn't it? Right? Like, to the enemies, we're the enemies. So it's hard to get our minds around, but when we come from that perspective of understanding, we say, like, oh, I don't really have anything. They just feel, if they feel anxious about me the same way I feel anxious about them, I can know, well, I don't want to harm them, so probably they don't want to harm me either. Anyway, these are just some thoughts on the matter. Hopefully it's helpful, but give it a try with a smaller number and work to larger numbers, and see if the anxiety dissipates. And also, I haven't seen so many cases where, like, metta never works. I could see that it's difficult for some people to practice, but maybe just imagine that when you close your eyes, it's just a group of kittens sitting around you, and that'll probably help a lot. Just a bunch of purring kittens that are really happy. That's who you're meditating with. Or even, maybe do that. It might be hard to find a bunch of kittens, but okay, coming back to this question here. Let me just make sure. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, well, 27 years, that's a long time. So obviously you've been, Rick, you've been, you're well versed in group practice. So I just think it's just something else to reveal, something else to work with in the mind. And some people might never have discovered what you've discovered. They just might not be aware of that anxiety or why it's there. And so I guess that's a really beautiful thing to be able to notice, and then say, like, oh yeah, this is yoniso manasikara. This is noticing what is the origin of this, what is the cause of this. This is kind of the wise attention I was talking about, seeing, like, really, like, where does this come from? Why is it here? And how to deal with it, and sort of yoniso manasikara is the right way of paying attention to something. So rather than running away from something, you're paying attention to it, and you're trying to see, as I was saying, like, the other side, like, when you think something's ugly, try to imagine it as beautiful, or vice versa. These are some of the pathways of yoniso manasikara. So Chandrasekhar is asking, what is the purpose of practicing Samadhi by Buddhist monks? Well, the why there is a practice of, first of all, let's talk about Samadhi, is what it's the name is usually referred to as concentration. So it's one of the path factors, the Eightfold Path, and it's in the sort of the Samadhi group. So there's Sila, Samadhi, Panya. There's sort of the ethical sense of how we behave, and then there's the wisdom element of the path, which is in our intentions, our views, what we gain in our understanding. And then there's the Samadhi element, that working with the mind that we're actually doing. So that's, right effort and right concentration, right mindfulness. These are the three in that group, in the Samadhi group. People translate that word as concentration, but many of you probably have heard this or think about it yourself, that concentration sometimes comes with that furling of the brow and that really focus, sort of almost having a fist, like I'm going to get through this, I'm going to concentrate and force my mind into this one-pointedness. Whereas I think better translation that I've enjoyed is like collectedness. So like the mind is collected, which in a way makes sense because you also think about wholesome qualities and how the mind can be calm and serene and clear. These are words just describing that collected, or also collected of things, these good qualities. But it's also a sense of having like a boundary around it, and the mind isn't going out. It's collected around these good qualities, but it's also kind of like you imagine like a sheep, a goat, or a cow that has a fence around it, and it's comfortable in that domain, or we hope it's comfortable, and it, with that fence, it might have a feeling of wanting to get out, but it knows it's likely to stay within that domain, and so we're providing that fence for our mind, but not in a way that's negative, but in more of a protective way. Like, there's wolves out there, and so this is the way to protect your mind. So there's these defilements, these hindrances, and so the concentration protects you from those hindrances. So this would be like desire, like sensual desire, or aversion. So like anger or fear, or you can have a sense of just being like tired or lazy, or as we were talking about, regretful and anxious, or just doubting, kind of, what should I do next, and why is it like this, and maybe I should do that, not sure what I'm doing here. These kind of things, what Samadhi provides is a sort of a place for the mind to be that is contained, and where those things are not overwhelming one. So it's like a place of non-overwhelm. And when we practice by repeatedly coming back to the present moment, something, as I was talking about, like the body, then we have a place to come back to, so our mind isn't going out into all these unwholesome pathways, the hindrances that obstruct the mind from clarity. What happens with that, when one has that collectedness of mind, is that one can penetrate and understand the Dhamma, and the way that's done is through seeing very clearly, like, what is the cause of this, as I've been talking about, what is the reason for this, what's the result of this. The Buddha teaches that there is suffering. What does that really mean, there is suffering? Does he mean all life is suffering? No, I experience things that are not suffering, so what does that mean? So we start to be able to examine that within our own mind, because we're not so distracted all the time with our own desires and these hindrances that are obstructing things. So it's Samadhi, sort of, it's not just a place where we can sort of stand our ground, it's and also a refuge, but it's also a place of clarity. So things start to be like sort of, you think about haze or a fog, as I mentioned, or clouds, like they start to dissipate, and there's a clear view we can see. So that's what Samadhi is providing us with. It's also quite enjoyable. It's a pleasant experience, so it's a pleasant place for us to go to. It's a pleasant experience for us to have when we are focusing the mind, or we're collecting the mind around good qualities. And again, it's joined with mindfulness as a factor. So mindfulness is that remembering to practice with a wholesome object, to keep a wholesome object in mind, whatever that might be. It might be the breath, might be our experience with the body, it can be all kinds of things. Might be a visual sense of like the body and its impermanent nature, maybe as a skeleton or whatever it might be. Metta is a concentration practice, just saying phrases or focusing on the feeling of metta, goodwill. So these are sort of the reasons that we do samadhi, is ultimately to understand and to be clear, and then to also use these practices, these samadhi practices of collecting the mind around certain aspects. So keeping something in mind, as I was talking about mindfulness, you're able to sustain that and then develop the mind. And sometimes that has to do with balancing the mind as well. So if you have a lot of anger, or you have, like we were talking about with anxiety, what Rick was talking about, then you balance that with metta, or kindness, loving kindness for others. And that comes out of a samadhi exercise. But ultimately, it's always about wisdom, gaining wisdom, understanding, seeing the Four Noble Truths, that the cause of our stress and our dukkha, our suffering, is from desire, unwholesome desire. And if we end that unwholesome desire, then there ceases to be a cause for suffering, and we won't suffer anymore. Okay. And okay, I'm not seeing any other questions there. Yeah, that what Rick is mentioning is quite a traumatic thing. He's talking about a friend who has grandchildren suffering due to their parents' meth addiction. So, yeah, I was thinking when I first read that, like, yeah, really traumatizing to have your child using meth, but to grandchildren suffering due to their parents' meth addiction. And if it's a friend whose grandchildren, that means that would be the parents of the parents. So that's quite a circle of dukkha, and very sad to hear. And it's important for us to, I think, remember that in our lives, it's easy to forget that there's a lot of suffering out there, and we can focus on our own suffering pretty easily. At least I can. And to forget that a lot of people are suffering, and in many ways that we don't see. We kind of will blow up problems in our own lives and not see something that, oh yeah, like if my own parents were using meth, yeah, like that's like sort of the ground of your experience falling apart. So so that's I think, although these things are hard to hear about or to experience or know about, they're important for us to recognize, because we see in this realm, it isn't in the sense realm, it's not something that we want to really trust or believe in as a refuge for ourselves, to really think that samsara is a good place, and this is all nonsense what the Buddha is talking about. It's just great. I remember there was a monk who was talking about, there's types, they say, in Buddhism. I'm not sure that it's too helpful to think too much about this, but they say there's different types of people. So there's desire, greed types, there's aversive types, there's deluded types, there's a few others. But he was a monk actually, was saying, oh, if you're a greed type, it doesn't seem too bad. Why not just keep being born again and again? It's no problem. It's so nice here. Just come back. It's pretty pleasant. And indeed, as a person who suffers from greed, I can identify with that, where we can get kind of deluded about the world and try to and we do think, especially the samsaric realm, that like, well, sometimes it's not bad, and why don't I want to come back? Why would I want to not? It's pretty pleasant. I can have these kind of pleasant sensual experiences, and I can feel happy. I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. But we it's really important for us to remember, like, well, it's not. That's sometimes the case, and also it's sort of an illusion, because we're relying on something that's ephemeral, that doesn't last, and we're believing in it, in having a wrong conviction towards it and a misunderstanding of it. So sensual pleasures just fade, and the more import we put on them, the more we unfortunately delude ourselves. One of the things that I find helpful in my practice around that specifically is to ask myself whether I'm aiming towards nibbana, towards the relinquishing of those sensual pleasures, or bhavatana, that sort of sense of becoming. These are the ties that are bringing me towards rebirth. And I'll ask myself, like, well, is what I'm doing by wanting that certain thing, or wanting to get my way, or whatever it might be, is that honoring, or is that really actually moving towards nibbana? Is that an occasion for nibbana? Is that something that's actually going to be moving in that direction? And indeed, it's not. So I have to sometimes use that question to jar myself, and to say, like, wait a minute, you shouldn't, Cunda, you shouldn't be going in this direction if you truly want to resolve your mind on nibbana, on not coming back to the samsaric realm. So I find that a helpful balance, because there's so many times where it can just be obvious, like, it's like, well, no, that's aiming towards rebirth, that's not aiming towards nibbana, I better not do that. So these are just some thoughts, and I hope it's helped those who've been listening. I'm happy that there are many from the past year who are joining us, and it's nice to just see those people, but also to hear questions. So again, I will be hosting these myself, is what I've been told from the other two monks, who don't have as much interest in doing these live streams. So they're happy to have me do them, and I will be doing these if all goes according to plan. As you know, there's a lot of anicca these days, till late March, and hopefully it won't be the last time you see of those two other monks, but I might try to get them on again. But otherwise, I'll be here each Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Live on the Pacific Hermitage YouTube channel. So please continue to tune in, and I will see you perhaps a week from now. All right, be well.